My name is Hannah, and today I'll be talking about the Whitney Plantation versus Monticello and kind of comparing the two of them and talking a bit about their differences in memorialization and my personal response to them. So, starting off, in Clint Smith's book, he talks about how he went to Monticello and the Whitney Plantation and just kind of talked about his different experiences at both. So, starting off, Monticello was Thomas Jefferson's home when he was alive, and even though he was a founding father, and even though he was like helped write the Declaration of Independence, he still owned hundreds of slaves on at Monticello at one point. I think it was over 600 at one point, and this was incredibly, first of all, hypocritical, but it kind of just showed that he was just a person that not didn't necessarily obviously practice what he preached. And at Monticello now, it's become this historical site where people are able to kind of tour it and um, able to like understand, or they're able to kind of learn about the history of Monticello. However, and historically, like Monticello wasn't necessarily the most historically accurate in the sense that it would really highlight Thomas Jefferson's achievements, but it would kind of almost gloss over how much of a role he played in being complacent in slavery and how he owned and kind of gloss over the fact of the significance of and like the brutality of owning hundreds of slaves and the impact on that. And Clint Smith even talks about how he went to tour, like some of the visitors were also less inclined to confront like the reality of that Thomas Jefferson owned that many slaves at one point and was just really complacent. And so that was something that he just noticed and kind of touched upon. And in contrast, when he visited the Whitney Plantation is actually a museum dedicated like for the purpose of educating the public about the history of slavery. And he said that when he visited, it was a completely different atmosphere in the sense that it was not glossed over at all. And from the beginning of his visitation, it was the forefront of like the purpose of being there. And its main purpose was just to highlight the stories of people who were enslaved, and it didn't necessarily shy away from the brutality of it, which is really important. For example, it had life-size statues of children who were in bondage, and just as horrific as that would appear to kind of confront close up, it shows like the nature of how the Whitney Plantation is taking its role seriously as this site to kind of educate the public about the history of slavery. But overall, I think that it's important that we choose to remember like the raw facts about certain scenarios, about certain historical events and historical like moments in time. But I think that the Whitney Plantation's approach to handling reflection and memorialization is the accurate way to handle a situation as dark and as dire as slavery. And as brutal as and as raw and real as some of these approaches might seem at the Whitney Plantation, I think that it's incredibly necessary, and um, it's just a really important part of the horrific truth of slavery. And embracing that reality is something that's really important to making sure that we reflect and are able to kind of show the significance of slavery. But yeah, thank you for listening.